Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. How are you? It's hump day. It's middle of the week already. It's the downhill slide. We're almost halfway through February already. I mean, wow. It's time flies when you're having fun or creating an ulcer. One of the two. I'm not sure. Not sure which it is, but it's one of those. Anyway, welcome back to the program here at the Michael Dukes Show. We've got a big show lined up for you today. We're going to cover a whole bunch of new headlines that have been percolating, and somebody is finally saying the quiet part out loud. Somebody is finally talking about the crisis, the fiscal crisis that we have been talking about on this show for years. And it, on the one hand, I should be ecstatic that somebody is finally, I guess, listening to me. No, I mean, I just get somebody is finally seeing what we've been seeing all along. But at the same time, I'm so sad that it took up until this point, it took this kind of problems for them to actually see what's going on. And it is it's frustrating. It's very frustrating. We're going to talk about some of those things. We're going to talk about the latest, the discussion that's coming out of the Senate about new revenues. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit. We've got more fantasy, more fantastical caterwauling from the cheap seats. That's not fair. That was not a fair. I'm sorry. That was not fair. More parents in the Anchorage area saying we just need to fund it no matter what. The schools. It's another multi-author opinion piece that goes over the same talking points that we were discussing yesterday. And we'll break it down for you. We'll break it down for you. We're also going to talk a little bit about the new lawsuit that the state unions, the employee unions, have filed against the governor. I'm a little torn on this one. There's some weird stuff going on. And you know what? There's a trend in this administration that I'm not super comfortable with. And that is the state paying for studies and information that they never get, they never release. And that is a troubling trend. I'll be honest. That's a troubling trend for me personally. And not that I'm a huge fan of the state employee unions and everything that's going on there, but they might have a point. I want to know what's going on. So we'll talk about that. There's also a new trend that's a little troubling. And that is that the non-resident hiring rate in Alaska is the highest that it's been in 30 years. And that trend seems set to continue, which is problematic to say the least. Also, the Senate President, Gary Stevens, the headline in Must Read is, it's not hyperbolic, but I think it overstates it slightly. Gary Stevens basically just got caught out doing what everybody's been doing for a long time, and nothing's going to come of it. But the headline reads, Alaska's Senate President caught in a lie about class sizes. Man, we have caught so many legislators in lies about components of education, whether it's the whole, commonly repeated mantra of, oh, we've had flat funding for years and all this other stuff. The problem is that it's a partial truth. It's not really a flat out lie. Well, I feel like I'm making an excuse for him now. It's selective truth. They tell you just enough of the truth to get their point across, and they don't tell you the full thing. And we'll discuss that. We will discuss that as we go through. What else was there? There's this weird story about this former Alaskan who's a cult leader. It's a cult of trans people that is I don't know. I don't even know if I want to get into it. It's so weird and bizarre. At some point I'm like, what is going on here? And then if we get through all that in hour one here, then we're going to pick it up with State Senator Mike Cronk. You thought I was going to say shower, didn't you? Because it's Wednesday. But no, what we've been doing is instead, because Mike Shower, now as the Senate Majority Caucus leader, the Republican Majority Caucus leader, the Senate Republican Majority Caucus leader, it's a new title, and I'm trying to get it right. The Senate Republican Majority Caucus leader, which is technically the minority, but it's the Republican majority. You know what I mean? Anyway, so since he's busy, and so he hasn't been able to spend as much time. But I've been working now with one of the press secretaries there, and they've been really good about trying to get me a hookup with one of the legislators each week, which I think is great. I love to hear the diversity of opinion and different folks. Some of these folks I haven't talked to in a long time. So it's really good. So Mike Cronk is going to be joining us in hour 2, and we'll see what we'll see what he has to say about a lot of the stories that are floating around out there, and a lot of the different things that are going on. I think, well, we're starting to devolve into two camps on this, on the education thing, and what I'm really hearing, and by the way, I heard some of the testimony that's being floated around in the different education committees and in the boards of education. Somebody sent me some clips of some of the comments and some of the testimony. And what really breaks my heart, I'm just going to say this is a pet peeve of mine. This is a pet peeve of mine, is when folks put their kids up on the up in the pulpit, right? Up in the testimony area. And it's not because I don't think that kids should be able to speak or anything else, but to me, most of the time these kids don't, well, a lot of the parents don't understand, but I don't think that, maybe 1 out of 1,000 kids would understand exactly how this whole process works. Because they're kids and they're worried about, TikTok and video games and whatever else. These are, pretty young kids. And to me, it is such a blatant appeal to emotion. It's such a blatant move to try and emotionally motivate or emotionally blackmail in some cases, the legislators or the school board or whoever they're testifying in front of, to see. I know they're trying to put a human face. That will be the argument. Well, we're trying to put a human face on this. There are people who are being affected, and these kids deserve a say. But we all honestly know that most these kids don't understand it. They don't understand how the funding works. Why would you put your child in the position to be in the middle of a tug of war over something like that? And I saw it was a clip that somebody sent me that of 3 or 4 or 5 different kids testifying about the school funding, and it was all appeals to emotion, and there was no facts involved in it, and it was, why would you take me away from my school, and I love my teacher, I mean, but it's so disconcerting that this is if we're going to have a rational debate about this, an argument, a debate, whatever, however you want to phrase it, if we're going to have a debate and a discussion about this stuff, take the kid part, take that out of the emotion. Don't try and emotionally blackmail somebody by putting kids up there and saying this is, because I think we could say it truthfully that in a lot of ways this is not about the kids. We talked about that yesterday. If it's for the children, we know that if it was truly about the children, you would mandate that much more of this money actually made it into the classroom. We would look at ways to reduce some of the extraneous overhead, administrative costs, and things outside of the classroom. And when the rubber met the road and things got really tight, we wouldn't immediately start cutting things that make schools more attractive to children. Right? Because what's the first thing that they're going to cut? Right? They're going to cut the music program. They're going to cut they're going to cut sports. They're going to cut, these things that engage children beyond academics, that are kind of the glue that holds some kids into the school, to motivate them to stay involved because, well, they're okay. They don't really love the schooling part, but they love the music, or they love the art program, or they love the drama or the sports or whatever it is. It's those extra things that help glue them in there. Things that I would argue are actually part of really that classroom, part of that classroom spending. It's the glue that holds them in place to pick up the rest of the reading, writing, and arithmetic. And instead, that's the part that they start to cut out. Usually that's the first thing that they go after. They don't go after consolidating healthcare or, duplicative positions or any of these other things. They go right for the red meat of, oh, you're not going to give us some money? Well, then we're just going to cut the art program for your kids. See how you like it then. I mean, that's not what they say, but that's the implication. And it's almost predictable. You can just write the script that this is what's going to happen. And we see that now in many of the talk. I mean, I'm going to get into this opinion piece, but this opinion piece hits all the same points that the last one did. High school hockey, swim, dive, and gymnastics will be eliminated. All school sports, middle school sports will be cut. Classroom sizes will swell. Then there's a story in the ADN, the top headline story that I saw. I haven't read the story yet, but I just saw the headline and it was like, oh God. The headline reads, hello. It reads, deaf community pushes back against the proposal to cut ASL professionals in the Anchorage School District. You've got deaf children, and you're going to cut out the American Sign Language professionals in the school. How are you going to teach them if they can't communicate? Right? I mean, that's a classroom. Seriously. You know what we should do? We should cut stuff to hurt deaf kids. That'll get their attention. I mean, doesn't it to you? And maybe you don't agree with me on this whole school thing, and maybe you're on the other side of this. But when you see something like that, don't you just go, that feels punitive? Right? I mean, we don't even have to agree on whether school funding should be there or not. You could be 100% an $1,800 BSA increase person. And when you look at that and you go, of all the things to cut, you're going to cut ASL instructors from deaf. Doesn't that just feel punitive? Be intellectually honest. I mean, I don't know if maybe this is an echo chamber. Maybe everybody that's listening to this agrees with me. But I sure would like somebody who doesn't agree with me to comment on this in the chat room or to send me an email, me@michaeldukeshow.com, and tell me, when they start cutting ASL instructors for deaf kids, regardless of whether you agree with me or not, doesn't that priority, because that's a prioritization thing, doesn't that feel punitive to you? I mean, I just, okay. Anyway, we're going to get into all this and more. Hey. It's time to do it. All right, we're going to be back in just a second. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Don't forget, you can always join us during the commercial breaks. We're behind the scenes on Facebook and Rumble and YouTube. All the places. Come on out and join us. Facebook.com/Michael Duke Show /live is one of the places you can come out and be part of the Cool Kids Club, the 6 o'clock club. All right, we got to go. Back with more right after this.
Your mental suppository. The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. All right. Too many windows up. Too many windows up this morning. Donna says, school districts get a lot of money for disabled kids. Are you in the chat, David Boyle? I mean, that's the, I mean, I didn't even get to that part, but that is true. Kids with disabilities have a multiplicative effect on the BSA. So if the average kid gets $5,000 for the BSA, the disabled kid could get 30, 40, 50, 100% more than that, depending on how the disability is factored. But I mean, why would you cut ASL instructors, people who speak the language that the deaf children need to learn and need to communicate? I mean, come on. Come on. David says, for 2 hours, the Senate Ed and House Ed committees heard emotional appeals, maybe 2% of facts. Yeah. Melody says, right. Why would you put your kids in that mess? Yeah. The kids, David says, the kids and the ed industry folks got 5 minutes each at the House Education Committee and the Senate Education Committee, while we, the people, got 2 minutes. So much for democracy. Good morning. What kind of oil resources state, says Lesko, can't make money with oil at high prices? Can't make money with $80 billion in the stock market, in the bull market. You know how they can't make money is when they spend it all. That's the problem. This is not a revenue problem. I've said this for years. This is not a revenue problem. This is a spending problem. Now, it's been a spending problem so long that it's actually created a revenue problem. In addition to the spending problem. It used to be they could have just cut back on spending and things would have coasted back to normal. But we've gone so far afield now. We've created so much dependency, so many programs, so many additional things that the spending problem has now created an additional revenue problem. That's the thing. Okay. I'm scrolling backwards here. I'm just making sure. Okay, that's the beginning. All right, I'm back at the beginning. Okay. So I'm just making sure that I got this thing. Let's don't talk about cults unless it's this one, of course, says Rick. The cult of common sense. Shouldn't have called it the Common Sense Corps. I should have called it the cult of common sense, right? I mean, they'd treat us like we were crazy anyway. I guess maybe at least we get a cool name. Terry said it's a form of blackmail when they're using the kids. I agree. It's emotional blackmail because these kids are not adding anything new to the equation. I mean, unless they're near adult high school kids who, are got some intellect and can make some rational arguments or have been taught through the Socratic method and they're all emotional pleas, if nothing else. It's all emotional blackmail. But Melissa says they don't want to listen to the facts. They just want to emotionally get you. That's the problem. I mean, this is the whole problem on a nationwide basis. I mean, this is the whole U.S. aid and Doge and all this other kind of stuff. It's all emotion. It's all emotionally charged. There is nobody, forget the facts. How do you feel about it? That's where we're at right now. Let's go. How do we get the 70-30 rule back? Says Donna. It's a good question. It's a good question. We're 8 seconds out. I wish I need a longer break so that I could talk more with you guys. All right, here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio lecture. Subscribe.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. We're continuing on now. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio. A lot of agreement in the chat room. There's nobody in the chat room, though, who disagree. What I was looking for is, I was looking for somebody who actually wants that increase in school funding and can look me in the eye, metaphorically, not literally, but look me in the eye and say, cutting ASL instructors from deaf kids, that's not punitive. Although Donna Ardwin makes a valid point in the chat room when she points out that somebody has got some explaining to do if they're cutting ASL instructors from disabled children, somebody's got some explaining, because the school districts get a lot of money for kids with disabilities. The formula, if a regular student gets $5,000, let me just pick a number, $5,000, then a disabled student, depending on the severity of disability or what's going on, could get 50, 70, 80, 100%, sometimes more than 100% more than that. You could get $10,000 or $15,000 for a disabled kid. So if all of a sudden you're saying, well, we can't have ASL instructors for these deaf kids, so they're just going to sit there and suffer in silence with nobody can talk to them because what? Tell me that's not punitive. Come on. Anthony says in the chat room, there are only 50 states. Who are the two places ahead of us? Because we're 52nd and 53rd, or 51st and 52nd in the new NEEP scores. Well, it's all 50 states. It's the District of Columbia, and then there's one for the and Puerto Rico is in some of them, not in all of them. But one of those comparatives is also the DOD schools. So the DOD schools count as one of the 53, whatever. But the only one we didn't beat was New Mexico. New Mexico came in behind us twice. So I guess we can all be thankful that we're not living in New Mexico. That's the thing. That's the thing. All right, let's I could just go on and on and on about this because I'm so agitated. While I'm here, I guess I might as well just go ahead and dive into this this next pleading. It's another opinion piece. It's another, and boy, tell me that they're not organizing around this idea. Yesterday, it was an opinion piece that had been penned by, what was it, 5-6 different parents. And today we have another opinion piece. South Anchorage families, your schools need you now. The headline. Holly Brooks, Amanda Dale, Michael Fulham, Asia Harmeling, Kellen Lake, Sarah McWilliams, Shayna Sedner, and Vanessa Vetch. All parents. That you scroll down to the bottom and it says they're all are representative Cologne's constituents and parents who fully funding our schools. And they're going after Julie Cologne in this article, essentially. They're all from her district, and they're like, what? She just last session, Cologne voted against the BSA increase in the final funding decision. Okay. So let me just go. Let me just start at the beginning. Once again, Governor Dunleavy has failed to prioritize education funding. And if the Alaska legislature does not act, drastic cuts are coming. If you haven't spoken up yet, now is the time. The school district's latest budget projections paint a grim picture. If the state does not increase the BSA, which has remained stagnant for far too long, we will see drastic cuts in our classroom. You notice one thing that I'm not ever seeing in any of these discussions from parents or advocates or anything else. There is no accountability to the boards or the school administrators and school administration for fixing this. This is not a shocking revelation. What if I told you that next year the schools were going to face a budget deficit? Would you be shocked that next year the schools were going to be facing a budget deficit? It's not like this is an unknown surprise, right? This has been going on for years. I did a search earlier. 2017, school district facing a deficit. 2013, school board discusses potential deficit. This has been going on for years. And they always point to the state. Well, the state just needs to give us more money. The solution is always to go to Uncle Sugar and say, please, maybe I have some more. And it's never any self-reflection and say, maybe we could do better with the budgets we have. Why do you hate children? I don't hate children. But if we are going to be fiscally responsible, and you know that there's a deficit, you're going to have. The problem is we built up all these expectations that all these things are always going to happen. And this is one of the reasons why the people are freaking out, because you keep telling them it's all going to be okay. The state, and then you point the finger at the state and say it's all the state's fault. We bear no responsibility. We bear no culpability. I mean, even though we haven't controlled our spending, even though we've grown our overhead, even though we used one-time COVID funding to pay for reoccurring costs when we were warned not to do that, or we did some accounting game where we moved money from reoccurring costs and we shuffled money around and we used the COVID money for one-time costs, but we took the one-time costs and we paid for, you know what I mean? That's what they're doing. There is no accountability. It's always that the state has not done it. The state hasn't increased. The state hasn't done this. The state hasn't. We are spending, I mean, $1.242526 billion on 127,000 students. But it's not enough. So here's a bit of what's at stake, they say. And here's the laundry list of fear. Right? Remember yesterday? We are afraid. And by implication, you obviously should be afraid too. So let me spread the fear a little bit more. This is what this group of all middle school sports and activities will be cut. All of them. We'll put those children in seats and they'll be there all day long, and it'll be gray and dreary. We'll make them read Tolstoy. Right? High school hockey, swim, dive, and gymnastics will be eliminated. Librarians and nurses will be reduced to half time. Don't get sick. We'll take away your health care. Elementary class sizes will swell to 28 to 35 students. Okay. This one I got to call Pushwa on, because if you are already, you've got some of these schools that are at 50% capacity, 60% capacity, right? Some of them below 50. If you consolidate the schools and put more teachers into a single building, you don't have that problem. You've got a declining enrollment, and all of a sudden your elementary class sizes are swelling, which is part of what Gary Stevens got called on the carpet for the other day. The average PTR, pupil teacher ratio, in the Anchorage School District, and David Boyle can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe right now the average PTR is 21, 22. This is pie in this. Okay, I'm computer-based instruction will increase due to a combination classes and staff loss. What does that mean? Computer-based instruction? You mean they'll sit in front of a screen and learn from Khan Academy? That might be a plus. I'm just saying. Will eliminate the gifted program. Additional staff cuts will be made at all levels. Well, you should have let off with that. Increased staff cuts may lead to the elimination of immersion program teachers, risking the program's future. Some of these cuts we could live with, right? But what do they go to first? All sports and activities will be cut. These are not just numbers. These are real consequences for students, teachers, and families. Many of us left frustrated by repeated funding failures. But frustration alone won't protect our kids. We need action. You know what they don't mention in this anywhere? It's the same thing that was missing from yesterday's opinion piece. You know what they don't mention at all? These are real consequences. Many of us have felt frustrated by repeated funding failures. You know what you should be frustrated about as parents? The failures of the kids. The fact that the kids we're spending gobs of money and the kids are scoring 52nd out of 53 districts and jurisdictions that they're counting, across the nation. We're at the bottom of the barrel. Not a single mention about scholastic achievement. It's all about the funding failures. They want Julie Colomb. She needs to hear from you. She voted against the BSA in the final funding result. Even if you voted for Dunleavy or Colomb, you may not support seeing your child without sports, a librarian, or a school nurse. Call your representative today and tell them Alaska's children and teachers deserve better. Ask them to support, quote, stable multi-year funding, unquote. Tell me that just didn't come right out of the playbook of the NEA. Stable multi-year fund. They just don't want to fight about it. They just want their piece of the pie. Shut up and sit down. Let them have it so that they can go back to what they were doing. No matter where you stand politically, this is how they finish it up. One thing is clear. Strong schools make a stronger Alaska. Schools that work make a stronger Alaska. Spending more on schools does not make a stronger school. There is no correlation between the amount of money that you're pouring into a school and whether or not it's strong. What makes a school strong is the achievements of the school. I mean, I hate to point that out, that it is the ultimate achievement of the school in the end, the finished product that then goes out into society to create more children. That is the deciding factor in what makes a school strong or good. If money equated to good and strong, we wouldn't be at the bottom of the barrel. There's so many logical fallacies and all these are. This is all based on emotion. And again, it's being facilitated by the administrations and the school boards who are allowing all of we're going to cut sports. We're going to cut the math program. We're going to cut your art program. We're going to cut out instructors for deaf kids. Tell me that that's not intentional. Come on. Look, they got a headline in the ADN out of it. They got a headline in the ADN that said deaf community pushes back against proposal to cut the ASL professionals in the school district. Tell me that's not working as intended. I better move off this topic because I'm about to lose my mind. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. I'm waiting. If you really disagree with me and you think that the cutting of, if you don't think that's punitive, send me an email and explain to me why. I want to know. Back with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Oh, man. Districts get 13 times the BSA for intensive needs. It's about $78,000 per kid. Special needs get 1.2 BSA, which then goes into the formula. Special needs also includes the bright kids and voc ed. Brian asked, with his cutback on the ASL, don't they run the risk of getting hammered by an ADA lawsuit? Maybe, possibly. New revenue is just a term. New revenue is just another term for wanting more taxes. I mean, yeah, it's, yeah. I could possibly steel man the argument. I don't know if that's the opposite of straw man or not. He says, for instance, if there's 30 ASL instructors and only 20 children requiring ASL, one could argue there's room to cut there. On the other hand, you could look at the workload per ASL instructor per student and argue that 30 to 20 is efficient for outcomes of optimal conditions. The problem is that the end result itself is going to dictate which is perceived as the correct opinion. Yeah. The legislation has no accountability to the people of the state. My boss went off on me yesterday, said Bill, regarding money to schools. He hopes the PFD goes away and the schools get mega funded. Did I mention that he's top 10% and his wife is a teacher? I mean, again, there's no interest like self-interest, right? There's no interest like self-interest. I'm going back here. Superintendent Holland points to his predecessors as the problem because they didn't have a vision. Meanwhile, he's been the assistant superintendent and then superintendent for 6 years. So what's his vision? Melissa said, we cut activities years ago. It just goes to a pay to play. Not a fan of it, but I pay because my kids loves the sport, so it's not detrimental. Yeah. I'm just going through here. PTR in ASD is 21 to 25 for K5, about 31 in high school. Those are averages. Some are more, some are less. Okay. Computer-based instruction, says Jeannie, should be at the forefront. Don't threaten my kids with a learning advantage. I mean, we had computer-based instruction in homeschooling. A lot of the courses were online, and then we would work with them, and then they would work with their school, their contact teacher as well. I mean, isn't what they did during COVID? Wasn't it? I mean, I'm just crazy. So let's say the education industry gets all of its wants, says David. What will happen to student achievement? NEA's answer, it will take years for students to achieve better learning because we're just getting the money now, and it will take years for that. Superintendent Holland said he's down to $300,000. This is, again, that lie oft repeated is the truth thing. David's mentioned this before. The KPBSD superintendent said that he's down to $300,000 in his unrestricted fund balance, which by law shouldn't be able to happen. The state deed shows more than $11 million in the account. Does he really know what the hell is going on? Yeah. I'm scrolling through. There's a bunch of comments. Just a bunch of comments. The state courts told us in 2007 that we could sue over poor performance, but which conservative would sue, says Rob. I don't know, Rob, but maybe somebody needs to stand up and do it because they're taking your PFD. They're going to take your PFD to try and shore all this up. You should be getting something for your money at some point. Put all them chemicals in my body. All right. Did anyone go to the KPBSD meeting in Homer? I did not. I was thinking about it, but this is not a job, my folks. This is a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. I know Jeannie said she went, but we'll see. We'll see what's going on. All right. We're going to continue. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Make sure you like, subscribe, ring the bell, share it with friends. Let's talk about that. I mean, am I wrong with the punitiveness and all? This is, here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
I mean, it's just a pinch. It's not, Okay. What do we got? I think I probably should get off of this. I should probably get off of this bandwagon because it just agitates me at this point. But all I'm saying is do your own research. Don't buy what they're selling. All right. I mean, somebody in the chat room just said they had an argument with I guess not an argument, but their boss was ranting yesterday that they should just take the PFD and mega fund education. Okay. What happens then? I mean, game that out for me. What happens? You give them everything they want. They get an $1,808 increase to the BSA, which is, by the way, pegged to inflation. That's what they want. So that means that every year after the first 3 years, because within the first 3 years, it goes up about $800 million in state funding over the first 3 years. And then every year thereafter, there's an automatic $50 to $60 million increase, which just goes on as the years progress because it's based on a percentage, right? So it's compounding. So tell me what happens after that. Just paint me a picture. What happens after that? They get everything they wanted. Do you think one-time funding is going to quit? Do you think the requests for one-time fundings are going to quit? Do you think then we'll get the educational outcomes that we've been looking for and that we deserve? I'm just asking. I'm just for a friend. Well, the legislature is finally saying the quiet part out loud, folks. It's interesting. The last few days, you've been seeing more and more of it. And now the headline reads, Alaska Senate leaders suggest new revenue measures to address looming budget. Ira Samuels and Sean McGuire over at the ADN write. James Brooks over at the Alaska Beacon says, Alaska legislators say the state's fiscal picture is among the worst in decades. What?
Welcome to the party, pal.
I mean, what?
Welcome to the party, pal.
This is, I mean, have we not, you're just noticing this now, that it's just the Lyman Hoffman, the state of Alaska is probably facing its largest fiscal problem in 30 years. You're just noticing it now. I mean, we've been talking about this for how long, and you're just noticing it now? The ADN goes on to talk about budget analysis predict that without additional revenue, the state could face a $500 million shortfall during the coming year, even without increasing the state's education budget, which we know is almost $400 million in year one. Even with, I mean, yes, I'm vindicated. This is what we've been talking about, but why does it take this for you to figure it out? Hoffman went on to say the fiscal crisis is driven in part by the legislature's effort this year to significantly increase education funding. No, the crisis is not driven by that. It's worsened by that. What's driven it is the runaway, uncontrollable spending that this and past legislatures have been on. Hoffman has served in the legislature for 38 years. You, my friend, might be part of the problem. I mean, all through the teens, we had billions of dollars of dollars in the CBR. And instead of being fiscally responsible, we just spent from savings. We didn't control our spending. We just said, oh, we're $3 billion short. Pull that out of the CBR. That'll be fine. Don't worry. It'll all work out. Hoffman said the Senate majority has already discussed new revenue measures during a retreat before the beginning of session. He said, I'm glad to report that new revenues are on the Senate's list of things that need to be addressed this year. Oh, I'm so glad that new revenues are on your list. I'm so glad you at least discussed it. I'm so glad that that is your thing. Andy Josephson, who chairs the House Finance Committee, said the House majority had not collectively discussed new revenue measures. Doesn't mean that they're not going to. But then, of course, he went back and blamed the governor. We could entertain new revenues, but we're also aware that the governor vetoed the tobacco tax bill and the Turo tax bill, so I don't think we want to spin our wheels. Back in 23, you'll remember Dunleavy introduced legislation to bring in revenue from carbon sequestration. Remember, that was going to save us. Hasn't raised a dime. No income for the state yet. He also said a couple years ago that he would introduce a sales tax in the final weeks of the session. That never happened. So how are they going to do this? Well, Gary Stevens says they're going to probably increase oil taxation on oil and gas companies. And Rob Yunt has proposed a new piece of legislation that would apparently close the Hillcorp loophole. Yeah, the same Hillcorp that everybody's trying to work with and negotiate with to get all this gas shortage thing figured out with. How do you think that's going to play? Because you saw what happened last time. Kathy Giesel tried to do it. Brad talked about it yesterday. Kathy Giesel tried to do it. And they said, boy, it's a real nice gas field there. It'd be a shame if somebody stopped investing in it. Right? I mean, they kind of got you by the short and curlies at that point. They kind of got you over a barrel. Well, sure, you can go ahead and change the taxation structure so that we get taxed at the same rate as everybody else. But, we probably would then take that $100 million you got. We would not invest that in exploration anymore. So, I mean, good luck when the lights go out. Right? I mean, oh, it's a revenue problem now, but it's just, nobody wants to talk about the root cause, which of course is the spending. I mean, it has been the spending for years. Maybe now that at least they're admitting the same thing that we've been talking about for years on this program, maybe one day they will admit that the problem is the same thing that we've been talking about for years on this on this program, the spending. You can't continue to spend more than you take in and expect that it's going to go on forever. I mean, I'm a high school graduate and I figured that out, right? You do that in your normal life. You spend more than you take in and see what, do what you got to do. And Donna points out it's an LLC. It's not a loophole. She's true. It's right. They took advantage of the law and the corporate tax structure, and they made a limited liability company instead of a C Corp or an S Corp. Good for them. I'm not complaining. I just think it's ironic that they're going to try and we're going to level the playing field. And again, Hill Corp's going to go, great. How's that gas import facility looking for you now that we were going to buy that? We're going to buy that with our other company over here, Harvest, right? We're going to be a shame if that got slow walked, that got mothballed. I mean, there's the problem, Michael, says Ron. You didn't go to college. You're right. I actually did go to college for a year and then said, why would I? No. And I left and I went on to become a human being and an adult, and I've never looked back since. People who make money from government spending are unlikely to admit that government spending is the problem. Well, thank you. Well said, Rob. Exactly. I mean, the lunatics are running the asylum. Why would that be a problem, right? Right? Why would that be a problem? Yes, Lyman Hoffman, 38 years in the legislature. Yes, I mean the man who lined his pockets last year with the fiber cable bills that came through the legislature. There's some interesting things going on there in the whole Hoffman tree with the cable companies and the telecommunications. And I mean, it's a dirty, dirty business, my friends. We could get into that all we want. But we're going to be joined by Mike Cronk up next. Senator Mike Cronk, dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show. Mark makes an interesting comment. It kind of simplifies the problem it's a kind of a simplistic thing, but at the same time, there's a nugget of truth in it. He said, funny how all us older people were taught by moms with a high school education, and we built supercomputers. And now a second grade teacher needs a master's degree, and kids can't read when they graduate. I mean, it's a little bit of an oversimplification, but it's not wrong. They will come back for more. Yeah, that's what it's all about. We know what it's all about. We know that it's all about more. Every time. And like I said, game it out. What happens if they get the full BSA increase? Do you think that's going to slow down their appetite for spending? Do you think the one-time funding will cease? Do you think that do you think that's what's going to happen? The lunatics are running the asylum. That should be a headline for Doge. Yeah. Anthony says, I'm willing to entertain the not 0% chance that Alaskans being 53rd in education may be a correlation to why our government officials seem oblivious to math and the laws of entropy. They're in their offices taking off their socks so they have toes to use to tally numbers. Maybe. I mean, again, it's either intentional willful blindness or it's scary ineptitude. It's one of the two. That's really, that's really the only two answers there. Scary ineptitude or intentional willful blindness. Oh, okay. Does anyone support President Trump's idea to shove all of the Department of Ed's dollars to grants to states for their K-12 education? What would Alaska do? Just spend it wastefully? I mean, I guess you'd have to look at their track record, and their current track record ain't so great. So, yes? Question mark? That's what yes? Question mark? Mm-hmm. But yeah, Bradley points out that whole thing with Lyman Hoffman. If you look deeper into this, is Willie in the chat room? I haven't seen Willie this morning. Is Willie Keppel in the chat room? Willie was following this very closely. And he was giving some folks some of the backstory on this. The Lyman Hoffman angle, when you look at things like the broadband bill, the BAG bill, the broadband assistant grant bill that was in the legislature last year, and how they weren't allowing, this is why they didn't want to include Starlink on it and everything else. And you look at the family ties and everything that's going on, you realize how many people are getting paid at the corporate and at the community levels and village and the businesses that are being supported by that bloated federal money. I mean, it's really mind-blowing. It really is mind-blowing when you look at that. The conflict of interest that's all involved there. It's spooky. I don't want to go to any of it, says Cindy. I think she's talking about the budget presentations. Or participate in their online budget app. It's all to check the box that they tried to communicate. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They want to justify it in the long run. So, well, we try to do our best. I mean, they remember they used their budgeting app game thing last year, and they, everybody chose, let the state pay. That was an actual option. Let the state pay. And people were like, "Wow, oh yeah, let the state pay. The state, Uncle Sugar should pay all day long." So, all right. Well, where is Mike? Let me see here. So I gotta send from here. I'll send an email. All right. Here we go. What? But Lyman did not get them king crab dinners for a year. I don't know what that means, but other than maybe he's paying for things. All right, we got to go. Yeah, no, Timmy, I'm with you. Timmy says Starlink is all you need. With a few terminals, entire villages will have internet for less than $3,000. Yeah, I'm with you, 100%. There are so many solutions there. That was one of them right there. Okay, well, we're waiting for Mike Cronk to join here, and we might as well just get started. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
Sounds just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator, and live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com. Hey, how are you? Are you all ready to go for today? Y'all ready already? Let's get into it. We're trying to get Mike Cronk on the line here. He's having a I don't know. He's having some kind of issue here trying to log into the program. And I guess I gotta okay. I guess we'll do this. I guess I'll get my phone set up for this. See how it is? I mean, this is the technical issues where if I had an engineer, I don't know where I'd put an engineer. This studio is only 4 foot by 8 foot, but I mean, I would put an engineer in here if we could get it done. We'll see if we can get Mike Cronk joining us here on the program in just a hot second. And we'll see if, or, all right, we'll do that now. Let's see if Mike Cronk is going to try and call in here. And there he is right there. Let's see if we got him. Are you with us, sir? Are you with us, Mike? Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, let me call you right back. This didn't work because I just tried to hook my phone up while you were trying to call. So let me call you right back. Hold the line. We're gonna get Mike Cronk. We're gonna get him back on the. We're gonna get him back on the program. I mean, we're a professional radio outfit here. We can do this, right? We can make this happen. Hey, look at that. It actually worked. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. I'm sorry. The link has been working for months, so I don't know what happened, but welcome to the program. State Senator Mike Cronk joins us to discuss, well, a little bit of everything out there. So, Mike, it's been a while since we talked. How are things going down in Juneau overall? Give us your overall 1,000-foot view on this.
Actually, for right now, it's actually been going pretty good. Being on the Senate side is I would say quite different than being on the House side. There's half the people, and it seems like the expectations may be more streamlined. I want to say efficient, even though it doesn't appear that we've done a whole lot. But obviously, things have to go through committees and stuff before we really start getting and stuff. But it's not. The vibe is really weird right now, to be honest.
The vibe is weird. Okay. That's not something I hear from a legislator. The vibe is weird, man. Well, I mean, the vibe seems to consistently be, hey, we need more money. Shut up and give it to us. And, we'll talk about accountability and we'll talk about all that stuff later. Just give us the money. That seems to be the vibe right now, is essentially education sucking up all the oxygen in the room. Although I was talking about it this morning, there seems to be some cracks. Somebody is finally talking about what we've been talking about on the program for years, that there's a fiscal crisis here and we're kind of out of money and nobody really has been talking about it.
Yeah, definitely, I, as a, former teacher myself, I did teach a few math classes, and, I'm pretty good at adding, subtracting. And there's definitely a revenue issue that we have available to spend, as well as the education thing. And I'd much rather try to work on solving this education thing so we can actually work on energy issues, and, obviously, hopefully what we do doesn't screw things up. It actually helps what's going on.
Well, I mean, look, Mike, the bottom line here is that they're looking for an increase of it's almost $400 million in the first year, plus another 300 million and change in the second and third year, all total. So, I mean, almost by the time it's all said and done, it's over $700 million in the first 3 years. And then a $50 to $60 million increase every year thereafter into perpetuity. We're already $500 million in the hole before you even start adding stuff. So how is that going to work? Explain to me in small sentences, because I'm just a high school graduate, Mike, but explain to me like I'm a fifth grader, how mathematically that's going to work out, please.
Well, with what's being proposed in whatever bill that is, HB 69, that is literally impossible. I mean, I guess you can shoot for your dreams, right? But that number is, we've had lots of conversations over the last couple of days with different school districts. And obviously I was part of the education negotiating last week, and we had really good conversations. I don't want to downplay 3 days of wasted 3 days. It wasn't wasted 3 days. We really had good conversations about funding and outcomes and how we make things better. So it was very productive. And, as a former teacher and school board member, those are the kind of things I want to hear. Yet we didn't, come up with any, set things in stone, but I really want to, give my, thanks for everybody that's part of that to actually come with an open mind and have those conversations. But right now, you're right. There's a math problem, and the number they're asking for is simply, pie in the sky. It's not going to happen. Now, can we find a smaller number that works that with the policies and and the safeguards there that we're growing in education? I think we can do that, but we will still have to figure out how to make up the deficit. And right now, what because I'm sitting on finance in the Senate, and I want to say that the last number we looked at was about $191 million deficit right now.
Okay, but again, that's assuming zero spending increases, right? So just under $200 million. Does that include the supplemental, which I guess I heard is somewhere in the 230 range? Am I right on the supplemental for last year? Has that been factored in there as well?
That I'm not positive yet. We haven't. I think I may have missed the supplemental meeting at that time. I was in a different meeting, so I can't quite answer that one. I don't know, but I can definitely find out.
Right. So, I mean, if it includes it, then we're at double that. But if it doesn't, we're still almost $200 million in the hole to begin with, and that's with flat funding, essentially. Just status quo. That's what we've got. Now we're talking about education. We're talking about defined benefits. It looks like maybe the gas issue may not be, maybe the legislature's not going to act on that, which I guess is good in one way, is that it's not going to cost us any more money. But I mean, the size and the government grows just it's got baked in escalators, right? I mean, the budget goes up every year by $100 to $150 million just based on other formulas, not the BSA, but other formulas that are baked into it, including salary increases and employment costs and other things. So, I mean, we're behind the power curve. How much more can we afford to spend? I mean, in your mind, as you look at this, we're $190 million in deficit to begin with. How much more can we afford to spend this year?
Good question, Mike. I don't know. I know, and I may say some things here that people don't agree with, and obviously I'm not speaking for my caucus, I'm speaking for myself. As a former educator and a school board member, I know we do have legitimate issues with some school districts and their funding, right? And I don't know. I mean, I know you've watched what Fairbanks has done. I mean, they've went, helter skelter. They have proven that they are working towards making the cuts to to right size what they have, and you have to really respect them. I tip my hat to the school board up there, Melissa and Morgan and all this. They made some tough choices, and at least that's a sign that people are acknowledging that we need to right size things. And I think about 9 school districts. Most of them are remote, obviously, besides Fairbanks, and it's just the overall cost of the high energy cost, the huge increase in insurance costs. Obviously, employees always cost money, and they're probably going to cost a little more money every year. But those costs are real. In my discussions, especially even with the governor, it's like, can we target fund some of these things outside the BSA, which we can do, but those conversations are always come back to, we really need the BSA, right? Because it's more of the catch-all fund. We can spend that however we want. And, deferred maintenance is real. I mean, there's nothing, we cannot not argue the deferred maintenance issue, that whether it's schools or other state buildings. So we got to figure it out.
I think maybe that's part. I think what you may have just hit it on the head. That this may be part of the problem. Like you were just talking about, well, we just want the BSA one because it's set it and forget it. We don't have to fight about it for future years. And 2, and I think more importantly, we can spend it any way we want. And that is part of the problem. I mean, they took out the mandate in whatever it was, 2014 or 2015, that 70% of those monies were supposed to go into the classroom. And even before that, they changed some of the classification of what qualified as in-classroom spending. They had like principals listed as in-classroom spending and IT guys as in-classroom spending. But I think that's part of the problem. That's the thing. They want this. And here's the thing that nobody's talking about. And I spent the last 2 days reading through opinion pieces on the air, debunking some of the arguments and everything else. But the one thing that's not mentioned in any of these arguments for fully funding the schools and the children and all this other stuff, the one thing that's not mentioned is the achievements. Now, as an educator, when you look at Alaska and see that right now we're currently 5th or 6th in the nation on per pupil funding, and yet we score 52nd and 51st out of 53 on all the standardized metrics. I mean, what does that say to you? And nobody wants to talk about that. The governor talked about it in his speech, but none of the people who are arguing for full funding, none of the parents, none of the opinion pieces, and certainly the legislators, they basically said, we're not going to talk about that. That has nothing to do with it. Just give us the money, and then we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, no, and you're right. As a former educator, it does concern me. And I was a big driver in getting the Reads by 3 Act passed. And do I think we funded it correctly? No, but it was the policy needed. And right now, I'll be honest, I've talked to many school districts, and they're like, our reading scores are going up. And somewhere I saw one school where there was like a 17% increase in their scores. Well, that's good policy, right? And that's what I'm focusing on is, okay, we're going to put policy in place that works. And I will argue a little bit about we're number 6 in spending, I believe it was, something like that. My question is, why aren't we number 1? I said, we have schools in Arctic Village and Cake and all across the state. We really should be number 1 in spending. When you look at how much money it costs to actually operate our schools in Alaska.
Well, it's all about averages at that point, right? I mean, they may be spending $98,000 per kid in Cake, but when they average it out across the state, it's like $20,000, $21,000 per student, right? So, I mean, there's winners and losers in that argument, because somebody's, some kids getting $100,000 a kid, some other places getting $5,000 a kid, and then it averages out to $20,000 when it's all said and done. But you're right. But even, Mike, here's another point. Even when we were number 1 back in 2015, we were number 1 per pupil spending in the country. We were still at the bottom of the barrel for achievement. Nobody's talking about outcomes. They all want to talk about the funding. And I think that is backwards. But that's and
yeah, and I think I'll just be I am a pretty straight shooter. I'll be honest, I think what is needed, with superintendents and stuff. I think, and I'm not going to speak for them, but just my take on it is they've been kind of silenced, right? You have the NEA that is just ruthless on what position they are. I mean, you look at this is a BSA or nothing, versus okay, let's have a conversation about we need more money, but we're going to give in and say, hey, we actually want student outcomes. We want to educate our kids better. You never hear that. Right. And again, I was a teacher for 25 years. I refused to join the NEA. And most people I know that are in the NEA only joined so they have that insurance coverage in case they were ever sued. It wasn't like they joined because, hey, this is just a great, entity that I want to be part of. It's like, I want the insurance coverage. So our voices are kind of silenced out there. And I just said, hey, I'll be your voice. I'll say what I have to say. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I'll fight those battles, but they've been silenced. They behind the doors, they want the policies in place, so they can't deviate from that. It's like, oh, this policy's in place. This is where we're going to work for. And one of the other things, like on the READS Act, I'm just going to throw this in real fast. People are like, why are we funding a READS Act when we have teachers, teaching reading? Well, I'll be honest. I started my career as a kindergarten, first grade teacher, and through my university classes and my student teaching, nowhere were you taught to teach kids how to read. Okay, it's a science, right? Nowhere. So I'm sitting there, I'm talking to my superintendent. I was like, I had to get a couple expert teachers to come down and teach me how to teach kids how to read. So that is kind of education in a nutshell. It's like you're really a generalist, right? And you kind of figure it out as you go.
Well, I mean, that even leads to more questions. We're going to continue here in just a second. State Senator Mike Cronk is our guest. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right, State Senator Mike Cronk is our guest here, and I want to get back into that. I mean, Mike, you said something that I think was pretty salient to this whole point, and I think maybe the key here, the NEA, and it may not just be the NEA, but it's the education industry as a whole. They're looking to get one thing, and that is solid, stable, predictable funding. Which in and of itself doesn't sound bad until you realize that then it precludes the power of the legislature, or maybe a legislature without the political will, to actually then have to justify that spending for future years. Let me ask you a question. If the funding fairy came down tomorrow and said, okay, sure, $1,808 BSA increase, sure thing. You get it. It's locked in. It's pegged to inflation. You got it. Do you think that next year that there wouldn't be a call for one-time funding on top of that? Would that be enough, or would one-time funding continue on top of that $700 million BSA increase?
I'm not sure there's enough, Michael. I'll be honest. I would expect people to be back asking for more. I don't know if there's an end to it, and everybody obviously wants money, but some of us have to be that, fiscally responsible, do our best, right, to be fiscally as responsible as possible. I just refer back, I started teaching in 92. I'm sitting there looking around, and I was in Northway. That's where I grew up, and I'm like, there's going to be a day where we can't afford this system. Well, I'm pretty sure we're at that day, because if you look back, all the REA schools, the majority of them are all built in about 75, 76. They're 50 years old right now. How are we going to build new schools? At $30 to $50 million. How are we going to do it? We can't. We do not have the money to do that.
Right.
So we are in it. a predicament. And then you go to the deferred maintenance, and we talk about of across the state. We talk about, hey, we need more revenue so we can, increase funding for this stuff. But nobody has a vision of what's happening for the next 30 years. It's like, how about we're going to put some of that new revenue towards deferred maintenance? I know we can't dedicate funds, but we had better start figuring this out sooner than later. And we're not having those conversations. We're just thinking new revenue, more spending.
Look,
No new revenue.
If you've listened to this program, you just touched on my one last nerve when you talked about deferred maintenance, because I've said it once and I'll say it again every time. There's a special place in hell for the guy who thought up deferred maintenance, because that is one of the most pernicious and evil things, in my opinion, that any governmental entity, or really any entity, can do. You're basically saying, we've set aside money to maintain the assets that we have now, but we've decided that something else is more important in that funding, so we'll just defer it to a later date. And you're basically robbing people from one thing and pushing it on down the road. You sold them a bill of goods when you said, we'll build this building, whatever the building is, and we'll keep it up, we'll maintain it, we'll do it, your tax dollars will maintain it and everything else. And then the next year, we were going to maintain it, but there was another program that was more important. It is terrifying. And I mean, Fairbanks, when I left the borough assembly, it came out 18 months to 24 months later that the Fairbanks North Star borough had $250 million in deferred maintenance problems. $250 million for a community that's 100,000 people. That is insane. But that's where we're at right now.
Correct, across the state, and that's why I really don't want to see any new infrastructure per se buildings. Why it's built, that's owned by the state, because good God, we can't keep up with what we have. Why should we build something new at this point? It's like you guys know, it's a real problem, and
yeah, it is.
But we're not doing that. We're just raising new revenue so we can have, more spending. And hey, let's add $60 more million a year for defined benefits.
Right. Well, okay, don't get ahead of me here. We're 12 seconds out from returning to the radio. Mike Cronk is our guest. Please like and share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. If we don't get more folks involved, we're just going to continue to have these problems. Let's get to it. Here we go.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Okay, welcome back to the program. The Michael Duke Show continues. Our guest today, State Senator Mike Cronk. Mike, what's your district again? I keep forget to ask. What's your new district?
It's R, so it's 35
R.
and 36.
Thank you. District R. All right. I ever since it takes me years to remember what they are, and then every 10 years they change them again. All right. So let's continue on. We were just talking about education, and I asked you a question during the break. Essentially my question was, if they got everything they wanted, would they stop asking for more? And your basic answer was, there's never going to be enough, which is a little depressing, considering the fact that we're already upside down, and we're projected in the governor's 10-year forecast to be upside down over $500 million a year, every year moving forward, and just increasing. So let me give you the magic wand, Mike. You're a former educator. You've been involved in the political scene for a while. You've seen how the sausage is made. You've been on both sides of it and everything else. If I gave you the magical wand that allowed you to fix it, what would fix this educational problem, in your opinion? Again, your personal opinion. No, I'm not looking to throw anybody under the bus, but what would fix this problem from your perspective?
That person, the magic wand, I would, obviously powwow with all my superintendents, because I believe in, we hire people for a reason, right? They're experts in their field, and I would pull best, right? Because I know the teachers I had drove me every day, whether it was in sports, maybe not so much academics, because we were all, just trying to get by and do, stay eligible to play sports and stuff. But they drove you to be the best, right? And that's what we need to get back to. America needs to get back to, hey, we need to strive to be the best. If your expectations are low, well, that's what you're going to achieve. So I guess with a magic wand, I'd pull all the experts together and say, okay, let's work on solving this issue. And I think more people would be willing to say, okay, yeah, you do need more money when, reality sets in, but we know we have all these policies and the expectations are there to succeed. And, and again, society has changed, teaching, in 1992 is so different today. We don't have the same kind of kids. I'll just be honest. Before you had a lot of kids that came to school prepared, and now you have kids coming into kindergarten. And that's why people talk about early education. Maybe back 30 years ago, maybe that wasn't as important, but trust me, the last class I had in kindergarten as a PE class, wow. I was blown away at how unprepared they were for education. So there's a lot of things that we have to focus on and update in order to be successful. And we're taking on the role of raising kids. It's unfortunate, but it's real. And those are the things we won't talk about. We won't talk about how kids are unprepared or maybe they're hungry. That really factors into the kids' education. And that is parents' responsibility. It truly is. But we can't mandate that upon parents, unfortunately. And so we have to do the best of those kids. So if I had a magic wand, I'd bring everybody together in a room and we would begin, working on how we can reform our education to do better.
Right.
And that's simplified in a nutshell.
Yeah. I mean, it is simplified, but I mean, I think you bring up a valid point that the parental engagement is key to student success. We know that, right? I mean, that's why homeschoolers consistently score better than kids who are in brick and mortar school, because the parent teacher ratio is 1-to-1, right? Or the pupil teacher ratio is 1-to-1 because the parent is the teacher. So that's always good. The engagement is there. And we've got, observable data from charter schools, where the parental involvement is key. It's huge because they're the ones that put the schools together and do the boards it's all parental involvement. And yet we continue to have this pushback from the education industry that, well, we shouldn't have charter schools, or we should be defunding. We had a teacher the other day basically say all students should go to brick and mortar schools. There should be no correspondence schools because they don't like the competition. But the problem is that if parents want to be engaged, and I think post-COVID, that's what we're seeing here, is a tremendous amount of parental engagement for parents who all of a sudden discovered that the system wasn't what they were told it was. It wasn't doing what they were told it would do. And so they started doing for themselves. If the parents want to do this super engagement through charters or homeschooling or anything else, shouldn't we play into that? Shouldn't we lean into that? If that's delivering better outcomes, shouldn't that be part of the solution?
Yeah, Mike, absolutely. And I didn't touch on that. You're right. And I'm a firm believer that competition breeds success, right? I challenge myself even in school. If I didn't get good grades, it's because I was lazy, the bottom line. But I do believe the other thing that we've been hearing, which is, it's really frustrating to me, because I have 4 daughters, right? And 2 of them went to boarding school at Mount Edgecombe for 4 years. Rock star education. One of them had attended a charter school, great, and ultimately all 4 of them went to brick and mortar school. And so we're hearing these conversations down here, and they're being pushed off like those aren't public schools, and I really get frustrated with that, because as you get homeschool and charter schools are public schools. They are absolutely public schools. And, I'm a firm believer in the parent gets to choose however they want to educate their kid. I was a brick and mortar teacher, but I believe in that freedom and choosing what's best, how to educate your kid. Again, can we, I think one of the big things on homeschool is, we just don't know. Are they being educated? Well, we don't know that in a lot of things in life. We can't tell people how to live. But I believe most people are making the choice that's best for their kids when they decide to do homeschool or charter.
Right. Well, first, why don't you look in your own backyard? If you're worried about whether homeschoolers are being educated, how about you look at your graduation rates in your brick and mortars? How about you look at the recidivism and the rate of ancillary education that's required to get graduates up to a basic college level math class? You got 60% have to have additional training in math just to be able to take a 100 level math class. So stop looking at everybody else and start looking in your own backyard. That would be my suggestion. Now, there's been several suggestions to try and fix some of these issues. One of them, which I think makes a lot of sense, we have 54 different districts around the state, which means 54 different health plans and pools. Representative Vance has talked about pooling up and creating an enormous health pool out of that, and that would save, I think the number was upwards of $50 million a year if we just consolidated the healthcare plan. There was another discussion about whether or not we should consolidate school districts, because 53 districts means we've got 53 superintendents and 106 sub superintendents, because there's usually 2 of them. And then it's this duplication of effort that is just consuming mass amounts of overhead. I mean, in some districts have only got 30-40 kids in it. Some have got 8,000. Why don't we consolidate some of these districts? Are those things that you think would work? Are these things that could help in those situations?
Personally, I do, but it comes back to and again, I'm kind of one of those people that I'm looking out 30 years later, right? I realistically, that's what I have left in my life, but I want to make sure we have a place here that's left for our kids and grandkids, right? So it makes sense to do that, but when you start looking at, and this from talking with Representative Carpenter and stuff, when you start looking at trying to find those efficiencies across whatever spectrum it is, one of the great examples I would say is, hey, how does America save money? Well, you know what? We get rid of the IRS. We just say a flat tax of 10%. But oh my God, what would happen? All those people would lose their jobs. CPAs wouldn't be able, then you start snowballing. And I know how important jobs are in remote places, right? And a school district's a big, that's a big employee of our smaller areas and stuff like that. So it makes it very hard.
But is it about the kids, Mike, or is it a jobs program? Right? I mean, that's a hard question, and I'm not trying to be mean, but that's really the question. Is it about kids' education, or is it a jobs program?
I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree. I want to do what's best for kids, and I do personally think consolidating some school districts would actually benefit some of our different places, because I do believe they'd be able to offer more. If we're saving costs, and I had numerous people in my office these last 2 days that want to be in the health pool. They want to be, like, they are tired of having that choice. We just need to be so we can save money, right? And so there are people looking at how do we save money overall as a state, because the bigger that pool is, the more we're saving, right? And you get a small school district that's fighting for healthcare, that's minimum $25,000 an employee, right? So how do we, do we just make that decision and hey, everybody's in Alaska care? I think that's a decision the legislature should be looking at seriously. That's the first step, at least.
Mike Cronk is our guest. We're up against the break. We got one final segment dead ahead. We've been on education, but I do want to talk about some other things. Mike mentioned the defined benefits and some other stuff, and I want to talk about his priorities outside of education sucking up all the oxygen in the room, but we do need to talk about some of the other priorities as well. So we're going to continue with him in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right, Mike Cronk is our guest. I don't want to beat a dead horse, Mike, but I want to come back to that because, see, that's always the argument anytime we're trying to do something for efficiency, we're seeing that at the national level now with Doge and everything else, is that, well, people will lose their jobs. Well, welcome to the party, pal. That's what happens in every industry around the world. When things have to change, the biggest cost factor or cost center in any budget, be it private, commercial, personal, governmental, is always the labor force, right? That's always the biggest cost sector of any budget. And so when you're out of money or you got to make changes, that's where you can make the most effect in a budget, is by reducing workforce, doing things like that. And yes, that means some people would lose their jobs. And that's, I know each one of those is a personal tragedy or a problem, et cetera, et cetera. But for the long-term health of the patient, if you got gangrene of the elbow, sometimes you got to cut the arm off to save the body, right? I mean, it's what happens. And so getting sick from the cure is better than dying from the disease. And what we're doing right now is, the argument is, well, we just need to keep it, even though it kills us. We need to keep it right up to the end. And that's part of the problem. We are not supposed to be a jobs program. Government does not create, government consumes. And so if you're not a net producer, you're a net consumer. And if you're consuming everything in the room, at some point it's got to stop, because mathematics says, no, it's not. You can't divide by zero. Sorry. And that's where we're at right now, right? I mean, and so any discussion on this is going to immediately go, well, people will lose it. That's what happens sometimes.
Yeah, and I think, Michael, probably a better way to do it is just to start, obviously going, to alleviate the initial pain, is you start working slowly at chipping away at it, right? And so it's just not such a impactful issue at the time, So yeah, I totally agree. You just watch government, whether it's federal government or, even being down in the trenches down here, we're watching it. We have to put a brakes on it. I want to make sure, obviously, our people are well paid and we can provide the services that we're supposed to provide. But we do need to be more efficient. I mean, government's probably the least efficient entity of doing anything. I think we firsthand know that. How do we get better? That's the question. And I think we've had a lot of people ask those questions, and you kind of get shoved off to the side about it. And unfortunately, does it play into politics? Absolutely. People want to be reelected versus, hey, we got to make some hard decisions and let's just roll with them. And I like, for me, I'll make those hard decisions, because if I don't get reelected, life will go on, it's just the way it is. But making hard decisions is what we should be doing to better our state, And again, I'm looking down the road, 30, 50 years from now. Are we doing what we need to do today to prepare that? Because I don't look in the past, but we should have had a lot of this stuff settled 30, 40 years ago. We should have had a lot of stuff built, so that we're not sitting here trying to figure out how to build it, the infrastructure that our state needs. And now we're scrambling. We just don't have the money, and it's not going to happen. And it seems like,
yeah, that's the thing. They're now saying the quiet part out loud. Like, all of a sudden, just out of the blue, the news media and some of the business as usual Republicans and leadership in the legislature is saying, wait, we have no more money. I mean, we've been talking about that on this program for the last 5, 6, 7 years, that this crisis was coming, and it was getting faster, and it was accelerating, and nobody was, none of the nope, it's all fine. Don't worry. This is fine, just fine. I mean, the house is on fire, but I'm just sitting here drinking tea. No big deal. And
yeah,
now they're finally admitting it, and it may be too little too late.
Right. Obviously I don't want to paint any gloom and doom picture, because we absolutely live in the most amazing place in the world. I love it. It's the only reason I'm actually sitting down here in Juneau is
Right.
How much I love my people. But we do have to come to grips with the reality that we just cannot continue spending. We're expecting oil revenue to take care of us, and yeah, we're going to get increased production, but that doesn't necessarily equate to increased revenue. And are we going to just be oil and then taxes of whatever kind we can dream up? Well,
Right.
That's going to make leave, right? We have to solve our issues, especially energy issues, because the way I look at it, maybe the rate of return isn't as great in revenue to the state, but are people keeping more money in their pocket that they will spend in our economy, especially in the private sector? Sometimes that value is way more than a revenue generated by the state. And you look at an example is like, Fort Knox up there, people knock on what's the revenue back to the state? Well, what's the benefit of having them in your community? The largest tax, you know what I'm talking about.
No, I know what you're talking about exactly. But the problem is, Mike, this is not gloom and doom. This is reality. This is a reality check. We're not trying to down talk or downplay the state. We're talking about the reality of there is no more money. And when you can't squeeze any more blood out of the stone, what do? That's not doom and gloom. That's a reality check. And unfortunately, we got to get back to it here. Let's go continue on the Michael Duke Show.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com. The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, one final segment here with Mike Cronk, State Senator District R. We've been talking about education. I'm going to get off that dead horse for a minute because there's other issues. Mike, you mentioned it. The defined benefits bill is still going on. They're pushing that hard. No real fiscal note that I've seen that is really comprehensive. The estimates right now are somewhere between $60 and $100 million a year in additional costs for a defined benefits program. And that doesn't count the potential for, again, more unfunded liability. We still owe, we still have a almost $7 billion unfunded liability from the first tranche of defined benefits. And now we're talking about adding to it, again, in an era where we have no money. What's happening with this bill?
It's over. It's over in the House right now, and I would have kept up on it, but it was my office has been a revolving door with every whether it's unions or school districts in and out the last couple of days, and it's all week long. So I didn't get to watch what discussions they were having over there. I believe Chuck Kopp was presenting the bill over there. It seems like there's a desire to pass that, but I think there's a reality of with the rest of us that I'm not going to add that kind of money, and I've been very clear to them. I've had lots of discussions with people about this topic that they're players, right? They're in the position of, hey, we have defined contribution, and none of them. I shouldn't say none of them. There's a few people that want the benefits, but the other ones are like, just improve our defined contributions.
Right.
We'd much rather have. Or, hey, can you help us with insurance if we retire, at 48 until we hit Medicaid or Medicare age? Oh, okay, those are real things that we could probably work on, right? And no, it's defined benefits for everything. This is the time. Well, we'll see how that goes, right? I mean, because you still got to get it by the governor.
Right.
We can waste 2 months talking about it in committee meetings, pass it on, Senate and House, and it goes nowhere. I don't want to waste time. I didn't come down here to waste time. Let's solve the issues we can solve.
Right.
And I don't think that's one we can all rally behind and get past. So
well, good. And I know the governor's not a fan. So the hope is, of course, is that if it does pass the House, that it gets vetoed. And I don't think that, you can look at it and tell me, but I don't think that there's the horsepower to override the governor's veto on this. Do you think that they have enough votes to do that?
I don't want to speak for anybody, but I don't know, Mike.
I'm just asking you to read the room. I don't want you to speak for anybody, but just read the room and tell me, do you think that, just, based on your estimation and been in the legislature long enough, can you count the votes and say maybe, or not close, or no, it's not going to happen?
I would probably say no, it's not going to happen. If it passes, I think, if the governor vetoes it, it's got a good chance of being upheld. His veto is good because, I just don't see how we can afford it, and I was just sitting in finance. We were doing a retirement thing the other day, and, I literally had to stop and ask, Senator Stedman, I was like, this is extra money the state's been paying towards defined benefits. Because so we've been paying extra on top of what we pay, an extra 200 and let's just say 50 million a year. I said, again, I'm math teacher. It's like, so if we hadn't been paying this, we would owe like $12 billion right now. Because not 7.1, we'd be in the hole. And then we have those big, like a $4 million payment. So if we hadn't been doing this defined benefits that we have, we'd still be like 12 billion in the hole, not 7 billion in the hole.
Right. No, it's a huge problem, and it's a liability, and it's an unknown. That's the worst part. The problem with defined benefits is you cannot predict what the benefits will cost in the future. But because you've defined them as you're going to get this as a retiree, you're on the hook for it. And that is the scary part.
Yeah. And like I said, I've told the people I'm totally game in improving our defined contributions, making it the best possible we can do. And most of them were pretty, satisfied if we would do that. But, you do have the unions that are just gung ho behind the defined benefits. And, that's the avenue they're going down. I'm not, we're not in the, leadership at this time, in the majority, or, so we have to back and see what they do.
Mike, those are really the two big things that are, again, sucking up all the oxygen and taking up all the discussion time. But what else are you working on? What else are you focused on? I haven't given you a chance to talk about something that's near and dear to your heart or passionate about. What other things outside of that? Or is this where your focus is lying right now? Where are you at?
Well, I mean, I think part of it is just coming over into the other body, in the Senate, and no matter what anybody says, building relationships in the building is really how you're going to get things done. Especially if you really focus on, having some of the things that I want to focus on. But, I really, truly enjoy working over in the Senate, and doesn't matter which, if you're in a majority caucus or minority caucus, or everybody's been really cordial and workable. And I know we're early in the session, and I'm sure things will tighten up, but I'm really, being majorly from rural Alaska, besides West Fairbanks there, fishing, game, food security are really big issues for me. Obviously we have salmon issues across the state. That's not area specific at this time. And those are important, right? That's people's livelihoods of filling their freezers and having that sustenance in their, to eat. And food security. I told somebody the other day, and I'm more of I don't specifically target my area, because if something's good for, the Mat-Su, it's good for Alaska, right? And something's good for Uktiavik, it's good for Alaska. And so I'm kind of sitting back and just watching how things go out, and trying to be an influence in the right direction of some of these issues, like education. I take the bull by the horns and say, hey, let's do what's right here. Let's versus just not being part of it, and then you get what you get, right? I'd rather be inside in those conversation of solving the issue in what's best. Again, nothing's perfect. Where you're never gonna have everybody that supports what you do or what you say, but in the back of my mind, I just want to make sure I'm trying to do the best for Alaska for the next 50 years. What we do now, what's the old saying, what you do now echoes eternity, right? So that's kind of my philosophy of being down here. The
biggest issue that I think overall, setting aside all these other things, the education and defined by, yada, yada, yada. The biggest issue is the fact that we in this state have had a consistent spending problem for the last 30 years. We've always spent more than we take in, essentially, and especially in the teens when we burn through almost $18 billion worth of savings and everything else. What's the solution in your mind moving forward? The fact that we have $500 million to $1 billion deficits as you move forward, it just gets bigger and bigger on the 10-year projection. What's the solution here? Is it strictly new revenues? Do we cut back? Do we have the political will to make any cuts or efficiencies in government? What's the solution to our fiscal crisis? And it is a crisis. I mean, I'm not, again, trying to be doom and gloom. The truth hurts sometimes. But what is the solution to our current and future fiscal crisis?
Well, it's a tough question. I mean, I do believe in being efficient at what we do, so I think that's one of our first steps is to make sure that everything we do in government is efficient. Obviously we do know, things do cost more, as we, salaries go up, right? So we're always going to have that little increase there. But, are departments too big? Are they, maybe some are too small? I don't know. I think we need a ultimate deep dive into everything and look at, it's like, it's just been a volcano. It's been brewing for so long. Again, a lot of these decisions are way before my time, and I don't want to badmouth anybody for the decisions they made and all this stuff back in the past, but we have set ourselves up. We're like at the apex of, okay, what do we do here? We literally have to rein in spending. And there's a lot of people that say, hey, I hear it every day on the show, we got to cut government. Well, I ask people all the time, please, where do we cut? I'm on finance. Where can I cut? I will be the first person to sit there. I mean, I know Ben Carpenter dug into it, and there's lots of those positions that are just sitting on the books. Okay, that's a good start, but we really got kind of negated as trying to do that. But where can we legitimately cut? We're talking if we're $500 million in deficit. Where do you cut $500 million out of a budget that doesn't drastically affect somebody's life at this point right now?
Well, it's all going to affect somebody's life. I mean, one way or the other, whether we cut or we don't cut, it's going to affect somebody's life, because either the state's going to crater into a smoking hole, and that's going to affect a lot of people, or we have to find some efficiencies and we have to cut some government. Maybe we have to institute some new taxes, which is also going to affect people, or whatever it is. Whatever happens, there's going to be an effect. Doing nothing, and hope is not a strategy. And that's what it seems that the legislature is working on right now, is the hope that we get another oil boom, that oil prices spike, that the market recovers, that something else happens. Hope is not a strategy.
No, I agree. And and the thing is, people, hey, Trump, is opening up our state and stuff. But realistically, when oil prices go down, it's good for yours and my pocket, but it's not good for the state's pocketbook at all, right? And that's the reality of the next 3 years. You start looking at the revenue here, and you're like, oh my God, in the next 3 years, we really are at a crisis situation.
We're in trouble. And if we don't clean house, if we don't make some changes, if we don't do something, again, it'll be a smoking crater. And that is the state of Alaska's budget and what happened. We've got to make these hard choices. And people are just afraid, it seems like, to make these hard choices or suggest them. There's no political will. Mike Cronk, we got to go. Thank you so much for coming on board. It was good to talk with you. And we look forward to doing it again here in the near future.
Thanks, Mike.
Hold the line for just a second, Mike. Folks, we're out of time. We'll be back tomorrow, The Michael Duke Show. Be kind, love one another, live well. We'll see you then. Okay, Mike, I'm sorry, I ran you right up to the top of the hour. That was unjust of me. So let me give you the final bite at the apple here. Last 2 minutes. Final thoughts on anything that you want to tell the folks out there, people listening on the podcast. Give us your final thoughts here.
Yeah, I would just say, make sure everybody has an open mind of what we're doing down here. It's really not an easy job, to be honest with you. Every time you make a decision, it does affect somebody's life, right? But ultimately, I whether, again, I don't look at, whether you're Democrat, Republican, how you vote on stuff. I'm not going to criticize people over that, because, they're doing what they believe their voters sent them to do, right? But we ultimately need to work together as a unit, whether it's the legislature and then the governor's team of sitting down and actually having those conversations of how we do better for the people of Alaska. Are we going to have a Alaska 25 years from now that our kids and grandkids want to be or can be? Let's leave it at that. They can afford to be here. That should be all of our discussion focused around the future of our state. And we do have immediate things that we need to talk about. And, somebody asked me yesterday, what would you do? I said, well, we need a fiscal plan, and we've had it, but we've ignored it, right? It's time that we look at that fiscal plan and we start implementing some of those things in there. There's some things we don't like, but you know what? It's what we have to do. We have to, I believe in making hard decisions, and I'll live with those hard decisions, but we have to do that as leaders. We are the leaders. We were elected to lead Alaska.
Right.
So
well, your job is to make those hard decisions. And austerity is never popular. But the bottom line is austerity is a reality in this state if we don't get our poop in a group here and do what needs to be done. We can't, Samuel says, going into further in debt so we don't hurt people's feelings. I don't know if that's a good plan. That's exactly right. Yes, people are going to be hurt. People will lose their jobs. Things will change. Maybe there'll be taxes. Maybe there'll be, yes, it's all going to happen. But something has got to happen, because otherwise the alternative, again, is the smoking crater in the ground. We don't want that.
No, and I agree. And obviously we know our first pool of money, where it comes from, right? It's that PFD, right? And so that's kind of the backdrop for everything is no one wants to say it, but where is it going to come from? Well, I think we all know where exactly it's coming from. That's the tough thing. I said, you guys want me to add money to the budget, and I'm taking money out of people's hands. I said, I represent a very remote, district, and not that it's not important to urban people. I don't want to, portray that, but I said, people, I don't want to say they have to have it, but they count on some of this for their cost of living and stuff. And even if it was a 2575 PFD, that's still $1,400 in your pocket that help get through the long winter or whatever you spend it on. I really don't care. It's your money. That I don't try to micromanage that stuff, but are we to that point where that's the next pot of money that goes away? It's looking like that, right? And so it's well, time. And I said and then where does it go from there? Where does it go from there? Once the PFD's gone, what's the next step? Well, buckle up, sweet lips, because the free ride's over, right? Now you're going to pay taxes. Correct. So, yeah. All right, Mike. Well, thank you so much for coming on board. This is obviously it's a tough discussion, but what we need is more people who are willing to have those hard choices and those hard discussions and say, this is going to hurt. Sorry. We're going to pull the splinter out. It's going to hurt. Sorry about that. But, it'll be better in the future. That's what we need. But, we're having a hard time getting people to really say those things. So I appreciate you coming on board and sharing with us. Thank you, Mike Cronk. Yep. Thank you. All right. All right, folks, we're out of time for today. We got to keep up the pressure and we've got to say the hard part. We got to say the hard part out loud. This is going to hurt. Yes. But getting sick from the cure is better than dying from the disease. That's really the best way to put it. We've got to do these things. All right. Appreciate you guys being part of it today. We will see you tomorrow. Be kind, love one another. Live well.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.